taking an unconventional look at stocks, property, bonds, economics, and more. This is the Total Money Management Podcast with Steve Moriarty, Tom Hill, and Jacob Senior.
Welcome to Total Money Management. We are back. Tom Hill, Steve Moriarty.
Welcome. We're back. Where are we back from?
We're back from outside. We're back from outside.
Hey, right, get on with that.
Right, get over it.
Right, what have we got?
Well, the big one this week is the federal government budget.
Ooh, lovely.
2024-2025. There's been uproar. There's been downroar.
There's usual analysis.
Oh,
it's good. It's bad.
It's the left
terrible.
and the right, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
But I think I might do a bit of a plug. We made a budget review which has gone out to the subscribers yesterday, by the time you're listening to this, 2 weeks ago, which is quite interesting if you want our narrative on the budget. But the main things are, the main thing for us anyways is energy and people getting a bit of relief around energy. And running a budget surplus means we're just taking more money out of the economy rather than putting more money in and relying on the private sector, so companies, individuals, and exports to drive economic growth.
Yep. Yeah. That's the macro point. The biggest point is if the government... See, people think a household is like a government or a government is like a household. If a household runs a deficit, that's really bad. But if the government runs a deficit, who gets the money?
The people.
Right. So what would you argue? You'd be saying, well, this is a good look. I'll get the government to continue to run a deficit. Right? But people go, the government are going to run out of money. Well, no, they're not. It's the Australian government's money. They can't run out of money.
But if people spend that money and don't pay down their debts and everything, then that's going to cause more inflation, right?
Well, yes. Well, yeah, but hang on. Take a step back. The point I'm saying is when the federal government say, great news, we've generated a budget surplus, what you're saying is, great news, we spent 100 billion, but we took in 109 billion. So in other words, you guys have got 9 billion less than what we spent. So that means that you've got less money because the government took more off the economy. When Chalmers said, we've got a $9 billion surplus, all the economists go, this is really great performance, which is garbage, right? You want the government to be spending money because we're receiving the money, right? That's the really vital point. And so Chalmers next year, the budget deficit will be about 28 billion, right? It's an election year, so they're going to throw the money around. But the way to think about that is if you go back in history and you look at government deficits, right, every time there's a really big government deficit, guess what goes boom? Stock markets, right? Why? Because the government's putting money into the economy, right? And that you think of what we were going to talk about with critical minerals. If the government says we're going to spend $9 billion on infrastructure development. Okay, so who gets the 9 billion, right? Workers, businesses, engineers, water people, farmers, architects, blah, blah, blah. So all of those people are going, this is a good thing. We need to build more bridges, right? That's why everyone bangs on about they want the government to do something. But they then, on the other hand, hear this stuff with economists going, this is really bad. The government's spending lots of money.
Yeah, they're going to send us broke.
Yeah. Well, we've never been bloody broke yet. So, but it's just an important point.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
It's the way, as soon as the government says we're spending more money, everyone should be going, you beauty, this is great.
Yeah, cool. There's more jobs around. Well, on that note, there's grants for new construction workers to get in because there's not enough houses being built. I think there's grants around new houses being built, and there's also grants around building things more in Australia, which we've been talking about for weeks.
Yes.
Made in Australia.
Yep.
So that's all going to hopefully put some momentum in the Australian economy, give everyone a job. But that doesn't necessarily mean inflation is going to go backwards.
Yeah, but it also doesn't mean it's going to go up, Jacob. Because, again, people automatically say, if the government spends lots of money, that'll create inflation. Okay. If we've got full employment, right?
Yeah.
So people say, you imagine, let me exaggerate. Okay, there's 20% unemployment. It's the Great Depression. And the government says, you know what, we're going to spend a shitload of money. Everyone goes, oh my God, that'll create inflation. What, with 2 million people unemployed? Don't think so.
That's a good point.
Right.
I just want to go to Woolies, buy a carton of milk and not spend $100.
Yeah, but yeah, I agree. But part of that is that's actually, again, this is where people go, oh, that's, wages rising. Sorry, that's bullshit. That's Coles and Woolies going, hey, dude, we got a chance to put the price of milk up. Let's put the price of milk up.
That's true. Yeah.
Everybody does it, right? I said this 2 years ago with coffee. You really seriously think coffee merchants out there are going, inflation's saying, let's cut the price back to $4 like it used to be. No.
It's $7 a cup.
They're going, everything else is going up and I need to keep up.
Yep. But you know what they do say, Tom? They expect to have higher prices. Right? If my coffee was $4 a cup, right? Then it went to $4.50. Okay, so that's 12.5% increase. Now this is 2 years ago, right? Why didn't it go to $4.10? Right?
Yeah.
Because they knew that if I walked in and they went, hey dude, it's $4.50, I'd go, oh well, yep, everything's going up.
Yeah.
Whereas if I walked in like 5 years ago and they said, coffee's going up to $4.50, I'd be going, what? What for? Because nothing else is going up. But when you get that collective, and you think about it in the stock market, stocks are going up, we've got to buy stocks. Why? Well, they're just going up, right? Everybody expects them to go up, so everybody buys more stocks, right? So there's that Zeitgeist, which is the public saying, like Jacob saying, chicken's $20, it's always, it's so expensive. If it goes to 21, you'll go, it's going up.
Well, the funny thing is, I'm still buying the chicken, and the coffee shops are still full.
Just complaining about it.
There you go.
Can't be that bad.
Well, but it's also about making choices, right? Yeah. And again, I'm the same. $4.50 for coffee. I'm still paying.
I'll still have one.
I'm still buying 3 coffees a day, right? I've never said to myself, you know what? That's it. I'm going to go to a place that's got shitty $4 coffee.
Or make it at home.
Or make it at home, right? Because for me, and I think we were talking about this last week, part of the experience is just getting out of the house, right? I just want to go and sit in the sunshine and, because I work from home. So therefore it's like, I just want to go up and sit in the sunshine, have a coffee, have a thing, Could I make a $2 coffee at home? Absolutely. But
am I going to? No.
No, exactly.
I'll do that as well, actually, because I can.
But I will moan about paying more.
Hell yeah. It's un-Australian if you don't, mate.
We've got another point in here as well. How the tax cuts are spent will determine how much growth we get in the rest of the year. And we've also got a note here pointing that retail sales were lower, which is also not a great sign.
Yeah, I think I've been saying this for a bit. The tax cuts come in July. The thing to watch there is how people spend that extra money. The RBA and the government are hoping everybody goes out and spends more of it, right? So if you get an extra $40 a week, Tom, do you go, oh, great, well, I'm going to spend the extra 40, or do you say, listen, I'm going to pay the extra $40 off the mortgage? Now, I suspect lots of people are going to do the latter, right? They're going to say, between us, we've got an extra $100 a week. Yeah, well, let's pay down the mortgage. Rather than go, oh, cool, let's go and buy Dorito corn chips that are double in price, right? So if people pay down their mortgage, that means they're not buying Doritos, which means they're not creating economic growth, right? All they're doing is using the money to pay back the banks. And so that's not going to create growth. And if you look at the economic growth projections, this year is like 1.75%. Right, well, inflation's running at 3.5%, so we're going backwards. And then next year, I think it's like 2% or 2.25%, right? So what I'm saying is they're not exactly, doesn't sound to me like they're calculating that everybody's going to go, gangbusters when they get the tax cuts, right? And the wealthy end of town, well, it doesn't matter if they get more money. They don't spend, they make more than they spend every year. That's why they're richer. Yeah. Right, so they don't get an extra $100 a week and go, this is wonderful. I'll go and buy more coffee. Yeah. They don't care.
The behaviour does not.
It's change. Really the middle portion and the lower portion to what they do, and the lower ones will probably spend more money because they're struggling to survive. It's the middle core, if I can put it that way, that will say, well, we've got a mortgage, let's pay down the mortgage.
Or pay off the car loan or something like
Well, because if you adapt to a lifestyle where you go, I used to buy, Dorito corn chips. Now I don't buy Dorito corn chips. If the government says, here's an extra $50 a week, it's pretty doubtful that you go, you know what, I'm going to go back and hit Doritos. You generally tend to go, hey, I can live without them now, so therefore I'll just keep paying down the mortgage. Yeah. Right? So it's not backfires, but it just gets to the government, I think, is believing everybody's going to go and spend more money. I don't think that's the case. I think what you'll find is a lot of people will say, let's just continue to knuckle down and pay down this mortgage.
Well, they're somewhat suppressed at the moment. People are just trying to live and get on top of their bills.
Yeah. Well, particularly
what's happening with the energy thing? So we're getting an extra $300 from for energy price.
$300 off a quarter, isn't it?
Yeah.
Off your electricity.
No, a year. Yeah.
A year.
Yeah, and $500 from the Queensland government. So you're getting $800 towards your bill. I got mine the other day. It was like $130 or something.
It's pretty good.
Well, yeah, but I think that's got the bit thrown in it, right? So they don't send you a check for $300.
No.
They just knock it off your bill.
Yeah, with the corn chips.
Yep. Yeah.
What's happening Monday? So we've got no comparison when looking at job creation. Do you want more baristas or more manufacturing? So,
baristas.
Well, yeah, if it's
obviously more baristas.
It's going to be $4.50 a cup.
Who wants semiconductors when you can have baristas?
Well, Samsung's building, a $17 billion Texas chip plant. One building alone is 11 football fields long and needs 5,000 construction workers. So,
holy
heaven!
Imagine.
Well,
that'll take 2 or 3 years.
Yeah. But the other thing is too, now times it by 10. Because Biden's done all this through the Inflation Reduction and the CHIPS Act. So
Dorito chips.
The really critical thing to think about here, what was that?
Dorito chips.
I think you need to get over the chips.
I'm feeling like Doritos now.
That wasn't good as apples is apples, or what I said last week. Apple ain't apples or something. Anyway, the point being that the globalization's over because America is now saying we're not getting chips from China. We're building them ourselves. And I don't think people realise how revolutionary that is, right?
It's boring, isn't it? So people don't...
Well, it ties up capital for a lot longer for a start. And that's why I'm saying it's a bit hard to describe in a 30-minute podcast, but this is why you're going to have a better life but lower returns, because your children are going to be employed somewhere along the semiconductor supply chain, right? Whether they're a backhoe loader or an architect or heaven forbid, a barista or a car maker, right? This is government spending a lot of money. The private sector then saying, we're going to spend a lot of money. That comes together to create a lot of jobs, right? But the capital, right, the total of, say, 100 billion is then tied up. So in other words, it's not going to be banging around with, between Bitcoin and semiconductor stocks and, into bonds and over into England. It gets weighed down. And so the returns will generally be lower because there's less liquidity, right? Can I have a loan? Mate, sorry, I just gave it to Intel and, we're happy getting 4 or 5% off them. So it won't be just this endless supply of money, because then you'll get inflation.
Right.
Once there's full employment and someone says, well, I need more workers, the workers go, oh, I'll go and work for Tom because he's going to pay me $25.
Yeah.
Right? Then you get inflation. Right? Because then Jacob says, Steve, I want you to stay $27.50. Righto. Tom goes, $30. That's when you get wage inflation. But that's still a fair, that's a long way off.
Sounds like a nice situation to be in for the worker.
Well, it is.
For the unions.
Well, yeah. But that's because for the last 40 years, the workers have been copping it by not getting wage rises.
Yeah.
Elon Musk wants to pay himself $56 billion in a bonus payment.
Get in.
Right? And the CEO is trying to argue that he should get $56 billion. I mean,
you got to know your worth. I mean, you're worth at least 70 bill.
I wish.
Tuesday. So the reason we developed the risk hierarchy and discuss concept like ergodicity, selecting individual stocks means the odds are stacked against you. So something we talk about a lot of, just understanding the benefit of... Are you going to sneeze, Tom? Come on, let it out.
Hold it in there, Tommy. Hold it in there.
For the
We don't want to
listeners
have
out
to
there.
edit the podcast. You're right. What was that, Tom? Off? What, mate?
I'm all right.
All right, he's back on track.
We
The
talk
risk
about the
quota.
benefits of ETFs, of
Yeah,
picking individual stocks.
Yep. I'm going to do a masterclass on this soon about. There was a study that came out a while ago, and of course the industry just sidelined it because what he said was, if you look at individual stocks in the last roughly 100 years or so, basically there's 3% of stocks have driven most of the change, right? So what does that mean? Most companies don't outperform the market. And in this case, he said they don't outperform 1 month treasuries,
Wow.
right? So, which, when you think about it, is quite logical because capitalism is, well, there's not enough room for everybody. So if you've got 10 companies like AI, well, the market's big enough for 3. Which 3? Now, if you invest in the 7 that lose, well, you lose your money,
Yeah.
right? So you have to say, okay, what's my chances of picking the 3?
Low.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. And so therefore that's why we say, well, wouldn't you be better off at least saying, well, get the AI ETF, and if a few drop out, that's all right because you're betting on all of them.
But stock picking's sexy, right? It's Wolf of Wall Street type stuff. It's got all the
It
media
is if you buy it at
attention.
10 cents and you can flog it at $50.
Well,
Yeah,
that's what sells the industry
Yeah.
in general.
Of course it does. But like the reality is most people are going to pick all the losers
Yeah.
over the long term.
I've been there.
Yeah.
Or you'll pick a winner after it's already done most of its.
Yeah.
Right,
It's good.
you know.
Yeah. And
Well, that's well, maybe that's just me.
well, no,
Well,
but
no, it's everyone. It's me and it's Steve.
every investor loses money. Every investor loses money, and you know where you lose most of it? Right at the start.
Yeah.
Right, because you think you know what you're doing. And that's why we teach people, because it's like, guys, you got to really understand these simple concepts. They're simple, but, like how many – did you guys ever go, mean reversion, gee, I really need to think about that one.
No, if I think back 10 years ago, if I'd have learned market cycles, asset allocation, and mean reversion,
And rebalancing.
and rebalancing,
Yep,
I'd be sweet.
It's funny,
absolutely.
if I reflect probably 6 or 7 years ago, one of the first things you kind of said when you were really explaining the concept about buying things that are out of favor.
Yeah.
And this is what kind of hit home, and I think a lot of people can relate to this. If you're going to buy something that's really out of favor, then you have to have this expectation that you're not expecting it to have a green day from day one.
Yeah.
So it's just like it's a mindset.
Yeah.
Whereas my experience, like the first investment I made, it doubled overnight.
Which is-
it was, I straight away saw a green. So
Yeah,
that absolutely broke my attitude towards
Yeah.
investing, and
I'm a genius. This is so
and I
easy.
think,
I
Jake,
should have started earlier.
I remember with that specky one that we always take the piss out of you for.
Yeah.
I remember initially you didn't load up 17 grand straight away.
No.
You loaded a few, and it was green days straight away.
Yeah,
it was
yeah,
like I made $500 today. I made $500 the next day. I made $500
and you
the next
put
day.
more in.
Put another 15 grand in.
Yep. That's what I did.
Same with the oil ETFs. Not oil ETFs, oil futures.
and that's the thing about momentum, right? Because if everyone's talking about it and it is running, and you put your money in too, you'll probably see some green days. But where are you going to take it out?
Well, the problem is by the time you see it, it's too late,
Usually,
right? That's why I say everybody talked about Bitcoin at 65,000. They didn't talk about it at 0, right? And it's the same with property, and it's the same with stocks. Everybody talks about it at the high. That's when the uninformed and the people who haven't had an education in stocks, that's when they get in, right? Because what they do is they look at their easy money. Oh, my God, look at these guys. They just buy these stocks and they skyrocket. Honey, we should be buying stocks and they skyrocket. Let's get in, right? And that's what happens. And then, like you said, Tom, it continues up for a period, then it starts falling, and, you get that old emotional cycle. Like,
you never have an exit strategy. You actually just don't have an exit
well,
strategy.
no, because you don't know why you bought in the first place.
Yeah. And you don't know why you're going to, how are you going to sell? Especially if it's done really well off the bat.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then who wants to sell a winning investment, right? Do you know about rebalancing? What? This thing's killing it, dude.
Well, the well wanners this week.
Yeah.
The well one obviously had a huge run, and they're all in the chat going, "Oh, we'll leave it. Let's let it run. We can let it run."
Yeah. It's a temptation because your brain is a prediction machine. And so when something goes up, your brain is saying, look at what happened last week. It went up. Okay, it's going to go up again. Your brain doesn't go, dude, sell everything because there's going to be a disaster next week. You never think that at the top. But you do at the bottom when you go, oh, next week's just going to be worse.
But if you do sell and you see it go up even more, for some reason that's painful.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hits
Absolutely.
you in the nuts. All right,
But it's the same at the bottom, right? Oh my God, I bought too early and it's gone down again. It's like, guys, have you got cash? Yeah, okay, we'll just keep feeding it in.
But that's why it's important to have the right mindset from the start. Like if you have an approach where you fundamentally understand that if this goes lower from here, that's actually a good thing.
It's a strategy.
It changes how you view it.
You've got to be and I think I might have written it during the week. But what you've got to do, Tom, is you've got to study investing. Whether you want to invest in property, whether you want to invest in stocks, whether you want to gamble in horse races, what you've got to do is understand how the markets work, right? And that's why we did the 8 principles, because what we're saying is these are the principles of all the markets, right? All markets mean revert. Right, all markets, you want to think about diversification, right? You want to think about your personality. You want to think about your asset allocation, because that's where every investor makes the mistakes, right? Like we were just saying, I put too much into penny stocks. You wouldn't have if you'd have known about asset allocation, right? Oh, I left it run too late. Well, you wouldn't have if you'd have known about rebalancing. So, and it's the same in property. It's just that it's a longer term. Right. Well, why are you buying this property when the yield, if property is such a great long-term investment, what's the yield? And the yields are awful. Okay, well, what are you buying it for? Because I'm going to get a capital gain. Okay, how sure are you that you're going to get a capital gain after Sydney or house prices have boomed for the best part of 25 years? Have you got money to cover if Australia has a serious recession and you lose your job? They're the things you got to work through. But in a rising market, when someone goes, oh, all these neighbours are buying property and they're all making money, let's just buy property. You go to the bank and bingo, the bank throws you $1 million, right? And that's what happens. Now you're going, I'm an investor. No, you're not. You're a speculator because you have no idea what you're doing. You're paying 6% on a loan and you're getting 2% yield. You're actually falling behind. You're just relying on the capital gain. And that's why I say, if you said to someone, listen, you can't ever sell this stock, right? All you're going to get is the dividend. Well, you sure as hell wouldn't borrow at 6 to get a dividend of 2, right? And that's why I say you've got to, even if you're in property and you sell, well, at some point you've got to study investing to grow that capital. Even if I said, look, it's a great time to buy bonds or, painting or something, you've still got to understand about the principles of investing, right? And people forget that when there's a bull market on because they just assume they can buy and it'll continue to go up.
Yeah. No, that makes sense.
Let's cover it. Well, Wednesday's back on the budget.
Yeah, we which we already kind of covered off, right?
Yep.
But look, on Thursday, we've got a chart here, but basically just summarising what we've been saying over and over. Most valuation metrics are showing that the US market is expensive, and it shows particularly that the US market in relation to the rest of the world is really out of whack. Right? So the US economy is roughly 25% of the global GDP, but 40% of the global equity market, which is just nuts.
Yep.
In the same breath, we're not, or not saying that we're not anticipating it, but we'd be surprised if this is the year the balloon pops with the elections coming up.
Yeah. It could do, but I think you said last week, Jacob, or a couple of weeks ago, you were talking about, it's sort of ripe for black swan.
Yeah, last week's 2 weeks ago now.
2 weeks ago. And so, you do. And I think you said, Tom, the bad stuff always happens at the top. And it's like, because we're at the extremes.
Yeah.
Right?
It's just being mindful that we're there. Not to say there's not still opportunities, but just an opportunity to kind of rethink your asset allocation and make sure that you're planning accordingly.
Well, it's we've harped on about it a bit, and just before about the short-term volatility stuff with the mindset of rebalancing and asset allocation being the forefront, and just knowing that, like, if you're going to tick all the boxes for catastrophe and war and all this kind of stuff, it's hard to ignore that when it's right in front 100%. Of your face.
There's still lots of cheap stuff out there, despite overall valuation being really, really high.
Emerging markets,
UK, energy. Yep. But again, like we always talk about rebalancing, as long as you've got a pile of cash there, as long as you're buying it cheap today, if there is a catastrophe, you get to pick it up even cheaper.
Yeah.
Like, unreal.
Well, we haven't had, this is, again, with the market, what you do is, because it goes on so long, people think that it's not, never going to happen. I saw someone on Twitter yesterday, right, the government's, the economy's going to crash, the governments are going to cut interest rates, and then everybody's going to pile into property again. We've got this piles of immigration, blah, blah. And it's, look, they could be right? But Sydney is 13 times income. The average is 3 to 4. Yeah. Right? Now, you look at that and people will say, mate, it's never going back to that. And my argument is, I know the stock market never goes back below, 17 until it does.
Yeah.
Right? And that's why I say, if prices always went up, well, prices are relevant because it doesn't matter what you pay for it. It's just going to be worth more in the future. Well, that's not the way markets work.
There's so much evidence to say it doesn't work like that. That's
exactly. But you get trapped in the moment, Jacob, of people saying, well, it's been really expensive for a long time, therefore it's just going to continue to be even more expensive. And that can be right, but at some point you either run out of people to lend money to, or people say, well, I can't afford a $3 million Sydney property. So, and it's...
Well, you've got property investor Chad on Twitter saying that who's only ever been in property for 5 years.
Yeah.
Saying that it's only ever going to go up,
Yeah.
and he's got a following of 60 million people.
There's a saying...
He has been right for a long time, though.
Chad, yeah.
But that's the thing. It's, you're right until it goes pear-shaped, but you don't know when it's going pear-shaped because you don't know that you were, do you know what I mean? Like I just wrote a blog. I don't think we published it yet, but I might just tell the story quickly. When I lived in Japan, we were posted, my wife was posted in Sapporo, right? And she was up there working for the federal government. And we went to Kuchan, which was the ski fields, right? And it had just started to boom, right? Australians were making bucket loads of money, and it was something like 25,000 Australians were going up there per ski season to ski in Kuchan, right? The snow was unbelievable, but the Japanese had never advertised it, right? They're just not very good marketing. So this couple go up there and they go, my godfather, look at the opportunities here, right? So they start building apartments. They build one apartment block with 2 apartments, sells it in a nano flash, right? Then they build 4, then they build 6, then they start building multiple developments, right? And they get up to 64 units in apartment blocks that they're selling. Then the GFC comes, wipes them out, and they lose like $4 to $5 million, right? Up until that point, everybody was like, dude, how do you do this? And they were dispensing advice. This is what you got to do. You got to do this and you got to do that, and this is how it works, and blah, blah. Right? Everyone's going, oh, fantastic. This is fantastic. Now, then it blew up. And then heaps of people got wiped out, right? The issue is they didn't know the market cycles, right? They didn't say to themselves, hang on, what happens if things go pear-shaped? We owe $5 million and, the apartments are worth 6. But what happens if the apartments go to 4? Well, then we're in really big trouble, right? And that's exactly what happened. And so that's why I'm a little bit critical of, and I think it might have been John Kenneth Galbraith said, the gurus are always the ones in the latest cycle, right? And so again, and you fellas will see it in Bitcoin, right? Everyone who's made money out of Bitcoin, what do they recommend you do? Buy Bitcoin. Yeah. Everyone who's made money out of property, what do? Buy property. right? I saw one this morning where some guy, you get this. I think we talked about before. Like how did I get healthy? Well, I wake up at 5 o'clock and I have an ice bath and I don't have any alcohol and I really eat good food. Oh, that's the way you do it. No. The way you do it is you have steak and Coca-Cola. That's all you have, and you just buy a lot of stocks. Right? And it's like, oh, okay, well, hang on. Which one is it? And it's like, well, it
Not
depends.
health advice.
No, yeah, not health
Absolutely
advice.
terrible health advice.
But is it?
Yes.
Is it? Why? He's 93.
Daddy Buffett.
You're cherry picking data here.
No. What I'm not cherry
Forget
picking
about
data.
forget about the people.
No. See, the cherry picking data is the people who say we made money in the last 10 years. You can too. And it's like, guys, the Cape was at 13, right? What's Warren Buffett do consistently? Buys it when it's cheap.
Yeah.
Right? He spruiks the principles of investing. He doesn't talk about the latest, greatest stocks or, that sort of stuff. And that's why I say you get, go to a bookstore. There's 100 books about how you buy property from people who have come down and done well in the last cycle. Mm-hmm. Right? And what they're doing is extrapolating out, going, this is how I did it. Jacob, this is how you do it. And it's exactly the same process as what they did. Yeah, you've got to buy a property, you've got to leverage up and you've got to find the great locations and blah, blah. No. You just bought it when it was cheap.
Rather than boiling it down to the principles.
Well, yeah. And I bought property cheap, right? And I made lots of money. I didn't know what I was doing. It was just I got there and I bought it when it was cheap, right? But I didn't know it was cheap. It was just that stage of my life I bought property, right? But I can write you a book on it. Right, I can write you, but that's my point. I can write you a book on it because I can be revisionist and say, listen, boys, this is how you do it. You've got to find a good area and, blah, 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 blah. Well, try doing it now when the average Sydney property is $1.7 million or something and it's been running up. That's why we're saying, Tom, how do you buy stocks? Oh, just pile in. What, with a Cape of 36? I don't think so. Right? That's the whole point. I can't... If I said this is how I made my money, that doesn't mean that you're going to make it the same way because you're in a different circumstance. And if I said always buy when the Cape is under 15 and it's at 35, you say to me, oh, Jesus, Steve, I'm not waiting
37 years.
I'm not waiting that long. Yeah. Yet that's how Warren Buffett's made all his money.
Yeah.
Yeah. Look, because we are running short for time, we'll just touch on the bonus section. Now, for those who have been listening for a while, it was probably somewhere in the vicinity of 5 to 10 episodes ago that we kind of touched on the three sectors that we were liking the look of. That was utilities, energy, and consumer staples. A little bit of a told you so moment for the World 2 strategy, but...
Yes, it's having a moment, yeah.
It's having quite a good moment. So since March, XLU, which is the utilities, that's done 16.5%. Which is unbelievable. XLE, which is energy, is up 9%. And then consumer staples.
Yep.
That one is up 5%. So
it's just I just wanted to highlight the idea about what you were saying before, Tom, about, buying when they're out of favour. Right? You can't see what's going to go on in the future. All you can do is say it's cheap.
It might have been longer. It might have been the 2023 review when we were kind of looking at what did really poorly.
Yeah, well, that's what I mean.
And these were the three.
Utility, energies and staples, if you go back and look in 23, they were the bottom three.
Yeah.
Right? So normally you'd look and go, I'm not buying any of those suckers, right? Because why? Oh, well, they've just done really badly. But that's the whole point of mean reversion, right? The whole point of being contrarian is saying everybody else thinks it's expensive or they don't want to buy it because it's done badly. I'm going to put some money towards it, right? Because what you do is, and what you've seen is everybody's piled into IT, right? Now, that's been right for a number of years, and I'm not disputing that. But you can lose a lot of money very quickly, which makes you return, you buy it 2009, you make 450%, right? Now the market crashes 50%. You lose 50% of 450%.
Yeah.
Right? So now you've only made 200% over 15 years. And when you start to add it up, you go, actually, I haven't done that well at all. That's how you get it from a buy and hold. You've got to avoid those big drawdowns. Right? And how do you do that? Generally by buying something that's already, had a smashing drawdown. But nobody wants to touch it, right? That's when you go in and go, well, hang on, this is looking pretty good. It's a whole utility sector, right? I'm not picking a company, I'm picking a whole sector. Okay, well, there's going to be someone survive.
It doesn't get much more boring than that. A utilities ETF has done 17% in 2 months and paid a nice dividend.
Yeah.
And we're all happy.
Everyone wants to talk about AI and NVIDIA.
Man, that's performed better than Bitcoin. So, anyway, I think that's a wrap.
Ciao.
Yeah. Oh, the chow. Yeah, it's what we've been talking about it, I think, throughout the whole episode. But it's the chart of the week here is showing the US, basically the global stock market valuation, the Schiller Cape. The US being all the way up there at the top right, which is crazy overvalued.
Yep.
And just highlighting things like emerging markets, UK, Singapore, Belgium, Brazil being underneath.
Cheap, yeah.
And cheap. So what I might do, I'll put it in the Facebook group now that's up and running, and we can anyone that listens to this can just join Total Money Management Facebook, and obviously free, and you can see all these things that we're talking about.
Yeah, and you'll get access to this if you subscribe to the week that was, which is free now.
Yep. All right, wrap it up, gentlemen.
Righto.
See you next week.
Cheers.
See you next week.
Stay up to date on our socials. Just search for Total Money Management on Instagram and TikTok. For your free investor personality assessment, go to totalmoneymanagement.com.au. And as always, remember, we don't provide financial advice.